My name is Rina and this is the story of something that happened only 4 days after my wedding, something I never planned, something that changed me forever. My husband Daniel and I had just finished the most beautiful wedding anyone could dream of. It was held in a big hotel near the beach. The air smelled like flowers and sea salt, and our families danced until late in the night. Everyone said we looked perfect together, the kind of couple that belonged in magazines, but sometimes, life hides strange turns behind perfect smiles. After the wedding ceremony, there was an after-party at another hotel organized by one of Daniel's friends. Daniel was tired, but I wanted to enjoy the celebration a little longer. He kissed my hand and said, "Go have fun, my love. I'll see you in the morning." That was the moment I met Baltasar in Gonga. He was nothing like Daniel. Where Daniel was soft-spoken and gentle, Baltasar had a powerful presence, tall, confident, and dressed in a dark blue suit that seemed made just for him. Later, I would learn he was the leader of the National Financial Investigation Agency in Equatorial Guinea, a man feared and respected by many. When I first saw him, he was standing near the balcony, holding a glass of red wine, talking to 2 other men who looked nervous in his presence. His eyes found mine combat-piercing. For a second, the noise around me disappeared. He smiled. Just a small, knowing smile. I felt something strange, not love, not attraction, exactly more like a pull, a quiet invitation to something forbidden. He came over. "Mrs. Rina, right?" he said, his voice smooth and deep. "Congratulations. I hear your wedding was the talk of the city." I laughed nervously. "You heard that?" "It was a little crazy." "I like crazy," he replied, his eyes still locked on mine. We talked for hours about life, about his work, about my dreams. I told him I studied accounting, and he smiled again. "Then you would understand numbers like I do." "Numbers tell truths people try to hide," he said. I didn't realize time was flying. The music faded, the crowd thinned, and before I knew it, we were the last 2 on the balcony. The night air was cool. My heart was beating too fast. Baltasar leaned closer. "You should go home," he whispered, but I didn't move. And then, without words, he kissed me for a few seconds. I forgot everything: Daniel, the wedding, the vows, the promises. It felt like falling into a dream that I didn't want to end. When we finally pulled apart, I could barely breathe. "I shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "I know," he answered, "but you are." That night, I went with him. I wish I could say I was drunk, or that I didn't know what I was doing, but I did. It was a choice. A mistake. A secret. He took me to a quiet villa outside the city, where the air smelled like jasmine and ocean wind. We talked until sunrise, then somewhere between the talking and the silence, I stopped being Daniel's wife and became something else, someone who broke her own heart. The next morning, I woke up beside him, and guilt came rushing like a storm. I couldn't look him in the eye. I left without a goodbye, tears on my face. When I got home, Daniel was making breakfast. He smiled at me with so much love that it hurt. "You look tired," he said softly. "Too much partying." I nodded, unable to speak. For days, I carried the secret like a stone in my chest. Baltasar didn't call, and I was relieved but also strangely disappointed. It was as if that night had existed only in my imagination. But 1 week later, I received a letter. It was short. "Some mistakes are not meant to be forgotten." I still keep that letter, hidden in an old book. Every time I see it, I remember the woman I was that night. Weeks passed after that night with Baltasar and Gonga, and I tried to return to normal life with my husband Daniel. We went back to work, had dinners with friends, took long walks near the beach. From the outside, everything looked perfect again. Daniel would often say, "I still can't believe you're my wife." And I would smile, pretending my heart wasn't breaking a little each time he said that. But deep inside me, something had already changed. After a month, I started to feel strange. My body was tired all the time. Food made me sick, and every morning I woke up dizzy. Daniel noticed. "Maybe you're just adjusting to married life," he laughed gently. One night I laughed too, but my hands were shaking. 2 days later, I bought a pregnancy test I hid in the bathroom, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely breathe. When the second pink line appeared, I froze. I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. I was pregnant, but I already knew in my heart it wasn't Daniel's. It had been too soon. The timing made no sense. I counted the days again and again, hoping I was wrong, hoping I had miscalculated. But the truth stayed the same. It was Baltasar's child. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked out to the balcony and stared at the sky. The moon was bright, just like the night I met him. I wanted to forget him, but now his blood was inside me, a secret that could destroy everything. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell Daniel. He loved me too much. It would break him, so I did the only thing I could. I called Baltasar. He answered after 2 rings, his voice calm, deep, and steady. "Rina there," he said, as if he had been expecting my call. I couldn't speak for a moment. Then I whispered, "I'm pregnant." There was silence. Long, heavy silence. Then he said softly, "Is it mine?" I closed my eyes. Yes. I heard him breathe in sharply. He didn't sound angry or surprised, more like a man who had already imagined this moment. "I see," he said finally. "Listen to me carefully, Rina there. You will tell no one. Not even your husband. Do you understand?" Tears fell down my face. "I can't hide this forever, Baltasar." "You can," he said firmly. "And you will. I'll make sure you and the child have everything you need. But no one must know it's mine. Not now. Not ever." His tone left no space for argument. He was powerful, commanding, yet there was a hint of tenderness in his voice when he added, "I will take care of you. You have my word." Then he hung up. The next months were like living 2 lives in one life. I was Mrs. Rina the Daniel, her young wife, expecting her first baby, smiling in pictures, going to doctor visits with her loving husband. Daniel was so excited. He painted the baby's room himself, yellow walls, white curtains, tiny stuffed animals lined up on a shelf. In the other life, the one no one could see, I was Baltasar's secret. He sent me money quietly through a private account. Sometimes, a small gift arrived, a golden bracelet, a soft blanket for the baby, a handwritten note that said only, "You are not alone." I never saw him again in person during the pregnancy. But I felt his shadow everywhere, strong, silent, protective. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit alone and touch my belly, wondering if the baby would have his eyes, his calmness, his unshakable strength. Daniel believed the baby was his. He talked about names and future plans, about moving to a bigger house. And every time he smiled, guilt stabbed me like a knife. When the baby was born, it was a boy. Daniel cried when he held him for the first time. "He looks just like you," he said happily, but I saw it immediately, the truth in his tiny face. The same dark eyes as Baltasar, the same serious expression, even as a newborn. My heart stopped. The nurse asked for the name, and Daniel proudly said, "We will call him Lucas." I nodded, smiling, though my eyes were full of tears. That night, when Daniel finally fell asleep beside the baby's crib, my phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number, but I knew who it was. "Is he safe? Is he healthy?" I replied with trembling fingers, "Yes. He's perfect, good," Baltasar wrote back. "That's my boy. Remember, Rina, that this secret stays between us. I will always watch over him, even from a distance." Years passed, and I kept my promise. Daniel never knew. Lucas grew up happy, strong, and smart, too smart sometimes. He had that same quiet confidence that made me think of his real father. Every birthday, an anonymous gift would arrive, a small wooden toy, a silver coin, a storybook written in Spanish. I never told Daniel where they came from, and sometimes, when I looked at Lucas sleeping, I whispered, "You are loved more than you will ever know," because even though Baltasar in Gonga and I lived in different worlds, one truth connected us forever: our son, a secret child born out of one night of forbidden love, carried in silence, protected by lies, and guarded by two hearts that could never be together yet could never truly let go. Time passed quickly after Lucas was born. He was 3 months old when I saw Balthasar in Gonga again. It was a warm afternoon, and Daniel was away on a business trip for a few days. I was sitting in the garden, rocking Lucas to sleep, when a black car stopped outside our house. My heart started to beat fast. I knew that car. I could never forget it. The driver got out fast and opened the back door. Then I saw him. Balthasar stepped out, dressed in a grey suit, dark glasses hiding his eyes. But even before he spoke, I could feel his presence, strong and calm as always. "Rina there," he said softly, removing his glasses. "You look tired but beautiful." I couldn't move. So many feelings hit me all at once: fear, confusion, and that same dangerous warmth I thought I had buried forever. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered, glancing toward the house. "I know," he said, walking closer. "But I needed to see my son." He looked down at Lucas sleeping peacefully in my arms. For a long moment, he just stood there, silent. Then he reached out a hand, slowly, carefully touching the baby's tiny fingers. "He has my eyes," he said quietly. I nodded, tears forming in my eyes. "Daniel thinks he looks like me." Balthasar smiled a little. "Let him think that. It's safer for all of us." He stayed for an hour, maybe two. We sat together under the tree, talking in low voices. He told me about his work, the investigations, the endless meetings. Then his voice softened. "I think about you often," he admitted. "More than I should." I looked away. "Balthasar, please, we can't go back." "I'm not asking to go back," he said. "But you know as well as I do we never really left." And he was right. No matter how much I tried to forget him, his memory lived inside me. Every time I saw Lucas, I saw him too. Before he left that day, he said something that changed everything. "I'll be in town more often now. I have meetings here every month. When Daniel travels, call me. We have things to discuss about Lucas and about us." I didn't answer, but we both knew what he meant. The next months were filled with guilt and longing. Daniel traveled often for work, and each time he left, I felt my heart pull in two directions. I loved Daniel's kindness, his honesty, his warmth. But with Balthasar, it was different. He was danger and safety at the same time, power and peace mixed together. Every time his car stopped near my house, my pulse quickened. We would meet quietly, sometimes in hotels far from the city, sometimes in a private house he kept near the coast. There was always secrecy, always caution. Balthasar would never stay long. He had a family name to protect, a position too important to risk. I had a marriage and a baby who depended on me. But still, we kept seeing each other. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't talk about love. We just shared moments, short, stolen hours that made us forget the world. He always made sure I was safe, that no one followed me. He even assigned one of his trusted men to watch the street near my house, pretending to be a gardener. "Your life must look normal," he told me one night as we sat by the window of the villa, the ocean waves whispering outside. "If anyone finds out, everything will collapse for you, for me, for the child." "I know," I said. "Sometimes I wish I had never met you." He smiled sadly. "And yet, if you could go back, you'd meet me again." I didn't answer, because deep down, I knew he was right. Years passed like that, carefully, secretly. Lucas grew older, and Daniel remained a proud, loving father. But in the shadows of our lives, Balthasar and I continued to meet, not often, not recklessly, but enough to keep the fire between us alive. He never broke his promise. He supported Lucas quietly, made sure his future would be secure. And though he never called himself the boy's father, I knew he carried that truth in his heart. Sometimes, when I saw him watching Lucas from a distance at school events or birthday parties, standing in the crowd like a stranger, I saw something rare in his eyes: emotion, regret, pride. And I realized that our story was not only about betrayal. It was also about two people who were trapped between duty and desire, who loved in silence because the world wouldn't allow them to love in the open. Now, when I look back, I know what we did was wrong, but I also know it was real. Baltasar was not just the man who changed my life. He became part of my soul, the hidden part that only I knew existed. And even though years have passed, and Daniel still knows nothing, there are nights when the wind outside sounds like his voice whispering my name, reminding me of the secret that still lives quietly in my heart. For years, I thought I could control everything. I believed that if I smiled enough, if I kept every secret behind a calm face, nothing would break. But secrets, no matter how carefully you hide them, always find a way to show their shadows. It started slowly. Daniel began watching me a little too closely. He asked small questions that sounded harmless, but I could hear the doubt behind them. Why are you always so tired, Rinathe? Who calls you so late at night? Why do you delete your messages so often? At first, I laughed it off. You're imagining things, I told him, smiling like everything was fine, but inside, fear began to grow. I knew Daniel wasn't a fool. He was quiet, yes, but not blind. He started to notice little things: how I became nervous whenever my phone buzzed, how I sometimes changed the topic when he mentioned Baltasar's name. One evening, he came home earlier than expected from a trip. Lucas and I were in the kitchen, and my phone was on the counter. It buzzed just once with a message that said safe to meet. Same place. Before I could grab it, Daniel picked it up. He frowned as he read the message, his face turning pale. Who is B? He asked quietly. My hands went cold. It's just someone from the charity group, I said quickly. We are planning a donation event. He looked at me for a long moment. That look, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger. It was doubt mixed with sadness, like he wanted to believe me but couldn't. He nodded slowly, put the phone back, and said only, I see. That night, I couldn't sleep. My heart was racing. I texted Baltasar immediately. He saw your message. He's starting to suspect. Baltasar replied within minutes. Don't worry. We'll change everything. From now on, we communicate only through coded messages. New number. New routine. The next day, one of Baltasar's assistants came to my house pretending to deliver documents for a local project. Inside the envelope was a new phone, small, black, untraceable. There was a note inside that said, use this only when you need to reach me. Delete all old messages. Change your habits. Let him trust you again. I followed every instruction carefully. I started spending more time with Daniel, cooking his favorite meals, joining him in family outings, laughing even when my heart was heavy. Slowly, his suspicion began to fade, or maybe he just wanted peace more than truth. But keeping the secret became harder as Lucas grew older. He was 8 now, bright, curious, and too observant for his age. He had Baltasar's sharp eyes and calm voice. Sometimes, Daniel would watch him quietly, confusion written on his face. Strange, he said one evening as Lucas helped him fix a toy car. He doesn't look much like me anymore. I forced a laugh. Children change as they grow, but my stomach turned with fear. After that, I started meeting Baltasar only when absolutely necessary, mostly when it involved Lucas's future. Baltasar had opened a private trust fund for him under another name, making sure his education and life would always be secure, no matter what happened. We met in public places, now libraries, quiet cafes, government buildings, always with a reason that looked official. If anyone saw us, they would think we were just two professionals discussing business. One day, Daniel found one of the bank envelopes with a seal from Equatorial Guinea's National Financial Investigation Agency. Baltasar's agency. Why is this in your drawer? He asked, holding it up. My breath caught. I smiled weakly. It's from a charity partnership I volunteered for a few years ago. Remember? I told you I wanted to help with financial literacy programs. He looked at me again, searching my face. Then he nodded slowly. Of course. I forgot. I smiled, but inside I was trembling. That night, I called Baltasar. He's asking too many questions, I whispered. I'm scared, Baltasar, he sighed. Listen to me. I'll handle everything. You just stay calm. He must never connect me to you personally again. He was quiet for a moment, then said, Rinathe, if he ever finds out, it will destroy all of us. We can't let that happen. Weeks passed, and life returned to its strange balance. Daniel stopped asking questions. Balthasar and I continued to meet in secret, but now everything was carefully planned. He taught me how to erase messages permanently, how to use code words in emails, and even how to make our meetings look like coincidences, like bumping into each other at business conferences or social events. Always act surprised, he told me once, smiling faintly. Even if your heart is breaking inside. We became experts at pretending we could stand in the same room with Daniel nearby and not show a single sign, but even the best lies are fragile. One afternoon, Lucas came home from school holding a photo he found in an old newspaper article that one of his teachers had shown the class. It was about government officials in Equatorial Guinea, and in the photo was Balthasar in Gonga. Lucas pointed at it, his eyes wide. "Mama," he said. "This man looks like me." The words froze me where I stood before I could reply. Daniel walked into the room. He looked at the picture, then at Lucas, then at me for a long, heavy moment. No one said a word. Then Daniel's voice came, low and trembling. "Renather, why does he look like our son?" I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Balthasar straining all the careful lies, all the plans couldn't help. The photo changed everything from that moment. There was no peace left in our house. Daniel stopped speaking to me, not out of anger at first but out of shock. He walked around quietly, avoiding my eyes, like a man who had suddenly lost his way inside his own home. That night, after Lucas fell asleep, Daniel sat in the living room with the newspaper photo spread on the table. The light from the lamp was dim and golden. I stood by the doorway, afraid to move closer. He didn't look up when he spoke. "Tell me, Renather. Who is he?" I felt my throat close. "Daniel, please." He raised a hand. "Don't lie." Not this time. For a long moment, I just stood there. The truth was a weight pressing on my chest. I wanted to tell him everything about the years of fear, the promises, the mistakes, but I also wanted to protect him from the kind of truth that shatters everything. Finally, I whispered, "It's complicated." Daniel looked at me, and I could see tears in his eyes. Though he tried to hide them, he wasn't a man who cried easily. "I deserve to know," he said softly. "Is he the one?" The silence that followed was louder than any scream. When I couldn't answer, Daniel closed his eyes. That was all the answer he needed. For days after that, he hardly spoke. He slept in the guest room. I tried to explain, to beg him to let me talk, but he always said the same thing: "Not now, Renather. I need to think." Even Lucas could feel something was wrong. He asked, "Why does Papa look so sad?" I told him Papa was just tired from work. "But children feel what words can't hide." At night, I texted Balthasar. "He knows. Everything is falling apart." He didn't reply for hours. When he finally did, the message was short: "We can't be seen together again. I leave soon." My hands shook as I read those words. Leave? After everything, all the danger, all the secrets, he was just going to disappear. I called him, but he didn't answer. Then, a few hours later, a message came through from an unknown number: "Meet me at the old garden tomorrow, 5 p.m. Last time. The next evening, the sky was grey and full of wind. The garden was nearly empty, just a few dry leaves chasing each other along the path. Balthasar stood by the fountain, wearing a long dark coat. When he saw me, he gave a faint smile, the kind that hides more pain than it shows. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. "You told me to," I whispered. "You said this was the last time." He nodded. "Yes. Because I'm leaving. They've reassigned me to another country. It's safer that way for you, for Lucas, for everyone." My heart felt like it was breaking in slow motion. Leaving? Without even saying goodbye to him? He looked away. He's better off not knowing. If anyone connects us, his life will never be peaceful. Tears burned my eyes. And me? What about me, Balthasar? He finally looked at me, and for a second, I saw the same man who once held my hand in the dark, promising that love could survive anything. But now his eyes were tired. Heavy arena there, he said, sometimes love means letting go before everything burns. Then he reached into his coat and gave me a small envelope for Lucas. When he's older. It's not money, just a letter. He has the right to know where he comes from one day. I took the envelope, my hands trembling before I could speak. Baltasar stepped closer, touched my cheek gently, and whispered, "Take care of him. And forgive yourself." And then he turned and walked away through the grey wind, down the empty path until he was gone. That was the last time I ever saw him. When I returned home, Daniel was waiting. He stood by the window, holding a small envelope, the one Baltasar had given me, the one I thought I had hidden. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you been lying to me?" I froze. He must have searched my bag while I was gone. There was no point pretending anymore. "Since before Lucas was born," I said, my voice breaking. "I didn't plan it, Daniel. I swear I didn't. It just happened." He looked at me, and his face went from disbelief to something deeper, not anger, but heartbreak. "Do you know what hurts the most?" he said. "That every day, I loved you like nothing was wrong. And you let me." Tears fell freely now. "I never wanted to hurt you, but you did," he said. "You already did." He walked to the door, grabbed his coat, and paused only once. "I'll always care for Lucas," he said. "He's my son in every way that matters. But I can't stay here anymore, Daniel, please." I tried to reach him, but he stepped back. "I can forgive you someday," he said quietly. "But I can't forget." Then he left. The door closed behind him with a sound that seemed to echo forever. That night, the house felt empty, too big, too silent. Lucas slept peacefully, holding his toy car, unaware that everything had changed. I sat by his bed, watching him breathe, and I whispered a promise to him: "And I'll keep you safe. No matter what." Then I looked at the small envelope from Baltasar, the one Daniel had left on the table. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just held it against my heart, knowing that inside those few folded pages lived the part of my life that was now gone forever.